the approval of this, and I'm hearing that they're using more AI and things like this, and it just, it's upsetting because all this fraud stuff. I understand that insurance companies need to be more diligent on things because of fraud, but in the end, I feel that this stuff just impacts us further as individuals with getting things improved from insurance, and it's just getting harder and harder. So that's just my thoughts, but I know it's a little.
I would concur, and if you want to cite the example of opioids that were used therapeutically for people who had severe pain, say like people in later stages of cancer treatment and all sorts of other issues that people run into. I do know that through the opioid crisis, we now have a system that for some, it has become nearly impossible for them to get, stronger payments. Now, I have a bias in this conversation because I lost a mother and a little sister to the opioid crisis, which I'm not going to get into right now, but I would be the person who would be railing in favor of just, if I was reacting, I would probably side with more restrictions. But if I'm thinking about it more kind of just from a grounded perspective and listening to what you're saying, what I'm thinking about is, access to needed healthcare and utilities. And it's just, to me, I think what we've seen is that it gets harder when there's a suspicion of fraud or there's a breach of trust. And I think that's what's happening all around, right? I mean, there's a breach of trust with government to recipients. There's a breach of trust from recipients to government, to healthcare in general, to clinicians. I mean, I think this is really kind of eroding more of that trust that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, 100%.
This is really scary. But I just looked up on Gemini, and it's the first time I've used Gemini to look things up about this. And apparently DOJ has been on site at HHS, and it is looking for things like this.
And HHS was explicitly thanked alongside, FBI and the different government organizations that helped with the tape.
That's awesome, because if HHS does find that, that's good. I mean, I honestly don't care who finds it, but I know how much fraud there is in Medicare and Medicaid because some of it I see. And, it's like, I would guess catheters. I would guess diabetic supplies. Because those are such big orders that if you ordered, I don't know, for argument's sake, if you ordered 2 million or 20 million, the system might not understand the difference.
So this is a little bit of a nice segue into what I was hoping we could discuss a little bit more, and I'll just give you kind of a little preview of the notes of what I was hoping we might be able to discuss. So this idea of institutional betrayal, I think we're kind of in that realm. Victim vulnerabilities. So basically that adults experience authority bias, tendency to comply when a doctor's name appears on paperwork, and cognitive aging slows fraud detection, health anxiety heightens fear, making free testing kits seem like lifesavers. But if you get a free testing kit, you're clearly giving away medical information in the process, and if that is a fraudulent sort of endeavor, that could not turn out good. So, and the emotional toil on victims is quite severe. Shame, self-blame, sometimes suicidal ideation. One longitudinal study found fraud victims' depressive symptoms rival those of violent crime survivors. Regarding institutional betrayal, there are studies that show institutional betrayal predicts PTSD and depression over and above the original harm. Patients that feel gaslighted, essentially if Medicare can't protect me, who can? Perpetrator psychology. So there's a classic fraud triangle here: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. Still applies, but recent research adds a fourth side: capability. And so many indicted clinicians possessed insider EHR access and billing expertise, giving them the keys to the kingdom. And so, moral licensing also playing a role. I work 80 hours a week saving lives. I deserve a little extra. Small infractions snowball. And then the kind of the dark Machiavellian triad traits, personality traits, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy surface in white collar settings. And they exploit opaque systems where harm feels abstract. Finally, we've got moral injury among honest clinicians. Picture an oncologist who spends evenings explaining to patients why their insurance flagged necessary chemo as suspicious. Well, this is kind of what you were bringing up. After the crackdown, she did nothing wrong, yet she absorbs the patient's rage. That is a moral injury. The erosion of professional identity when the systematic failure violates one's core values. Two more. So we've got also trust erosion in the public, right? So Gallup polls show trust in physicians, ethics fell from 67% in 2021 to 53% in 2024. So each scandal nudges the slope steeper, and the result is we get this defensive medicine where patients demand extra tests or avoid care entirely. Public health models warn of potential feedback loop. The more fraud, the less preventative screening, and the higher future cost. Okay, and so finally, and now I'm going to close my mouth and...
No, those are such great notes, Dr.
Okay.
James.
Okay, great. So final one, and then let's discuss. And then finally, group level cognitive biases, where we have the normalization of deviance, where every peer clinic seems to bill just a little extra, the aberrant becomes the ordinary, and we have complexity camouflage, where fraud thrives in confusing billing codes. Oversight bodies experience information overload, a modern cousin of inattentional blindness. In short, healthcare fraud is both a financial heist and a psychological assault. Billing must therefore engage wallets and minds. And I have more, but I think that definitely this is a pause.
You're not kidding, because we're at something that I allude to in many Karma Club rooms, because from having been around but not in the healthcare system. In other words, I don't have a dog in the fight, so I can't, except my own body. So I can't, I don't benefit from anything. So I kind of want it, swept out from an objective standpoint. And I just can't figure out how best to do it. But, sending those in there to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse seemed like a good idea. And maybe they did and will, get rid of some of it. But the other thing is, everybody's been saying we've had, all these inspector generals in there forever, and how come they didn't get it? They didn't catch it. And that's a very interesting question. So I'm hoping that waste, fraud, and abuse are something that artificial intelligence can get.
Don't gaslight your own body, Dr. Francine. Of course you have a dog in the race here. I mean, this impacts you, everyone you know, your communities.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is that one of the things that I believe is that way too much medicine is used on people my age. Let me parentheses that I'm 84. We get a lot of medical care. We're the people who get those catheters and glucose monitors and so on that Medicare pays for. And, and yet it's very hard to justify the cost benefit on us at this stage in our lives.
Yes.
So we need to have some kind of larger palliative care system for people who can't be cured.
Thank you, Dr. Francine. And I'm going to ask a question not to answer, but to also kind of do a segue to everyone else who hasn't spoken if you'd like to speak. But just imagine you're on your deathbed and you're in kind of institutional care and you are given a skin graft, unnecessary skin graft for part of some type of fraud. I mean, there are aspects of this that, I mean, it really did get under my skin. But if anyone else would like to speak or comment,
yeah, I mean, I was just looking up that in 2022, the Biden administration started a civil cyber fraud initiative. And it uses something called the False Claims Act, which has been around since, I think, like the Civil War, because people were charging the government for, weapons and all sorts of things. So this is not a new problem at all. It's been going on for years, and this investigation did start, I think, in 2022 because of the false claims for COVID. And they have recovered quite a bit of money from that. It's an ongoing problem. And the deputy inspectors that were all fired at the beginning of the Trump administration and replaced with Doge are the people that used to do this. So we already were doing this before Doge. They just renamed it, rebranded it, and put in new people. And maybe AI can help with it. I don't know.
Let me ask you a quick question about that. Both you and Dr. Francine brought this up. I mean, do you think that relentless AI surveillance of clinicians builds trust or breeds fear?
It depends if the AI is actually working as it's intended to work. We don't know.
Yeah, how do we know?
We don't know. And from my experience with AI, there's a lot that doesn't work in it. And I would not depend,
Mine too.
I would not depend on it for anything critical, really, without double checking it with humans. And does that save time, or does that make things more expensive? Considering the amount of money that you have to spend for serious AI.
This is just a context follow-up question to kind of deepen that. How willing are you to give? How much of your private data are you willing to give away to increase the reliability of these AI models? Is something I'm asking myself. Where do I draw the line?
Well, I actually think there's a deeper question to this. I think very often we turn to AI as a solution for problems that are actually deeper societal problems. Like, the bottom line is, we do not care as a society about old people. We see old people as a cash cow. We see them as fodder to increase personal wealth. As we warehouse them, we manage them and handle them in disrespectful ways pretty consistently across the board. And so this to me is just yet another example of the ways that as a society we need to, as a group, have more care, be more attentive, and remembering that AI is a tool in that, but it's not a substitute for actual care and concern, right? And to me, that feels like the bigger problem.
Well,
I
personalize
have
that more away from the we. I mean, I'm thinking to myself,
more personal than we. Okay, go ahead.
well, would I be willing to give away all my private health data to protect my grandmother? Yeah, probably.
Well, I guess that's not you're to me you're asking the wrong question.
That's fine.
Is do I want to protect my grandmother?
Of course I
Right?
do.
Like how the two. But what I'm saying is, of course we don't. We warehouse and dispose of our older people in American society. We're not attentive. We're not leaning in. It's not about care for them and respect for them. It's about profit generation. And so,
I'm sorry, Denise, go ahead.
yeah, and so to me, it's like all of this is like these are manifestations of that undergirding disrespect, right? That undergirding lack of diligence and care that to me feels like the bigger problem. Whether you use AI to solve it, whether you change, I actually have a deeply personal experience with this. I have a friend who was a pharmacist who got arrested, literally was put in jail because he was cutting down cancer meds. And we were absolutely we were stunned. No, not opiates. Literal cancer medications, treatment for cancer. And when we finally got to talk to him, to really sit and talk to him about it, he was just like, I got into this business to make money. And I was like, you're a pharmacist. This is not a place you have to have some sense of care for the people that you are charged with helping. And he really told me, he said, Denise, that's a pipe dream. That's not who goes to medical school. That's not who enters these fields. You have to look at the incentives around these systems. And I hated his answer, but I've looked at it for a long time of like, who does this work and why? So the tools to me are interesting, but I guess I'm a little more interested in the why. What do we really believe about our responsibility to seniors in our society, and what are we prepared to do to care for them?
I think
we've displaced.
Dr. Francine, I just want to get the reins of the discussion. I was kind of lead and just acknowledge that is a really fucking great question, Denise. And my hope is we have some time to get into that. I just want to lay down a final couple of notes so that I can feel like I've sort of gotten out what I wanted to get out of the reporting part of this, and then we'll finish the discussion. So part 4 was essentially just looking at how do we reknit the fabric of trust. And I'm going to go through this really quick. So basically what I want to offer is radical transparency, publishing near real-time dashboards of fraud investigations with plain language explanations of recovered funds. Sunlight disinfects. Having some ethical AI guardrails, so integrating anomaly detection co-pilots into electronic health record systems, but design them with patient-centric language to avoid techno-suspicion. 3, trauma-informed restitution. Pair every financial recovery hotline with mental health counselors trained in shame, resilience. Money alone cannot mend betrayal. And 4, moral inoculation training. Embed scenario-based ethics modules into medical and business schools that simulate gray zone temptations, fostering internal moral compasses rather than mere rule compliance. And so this is not a cure-all, but just sort of I'm throwing this out there to maybe continue the discussion. And if you want to just follow, Dr. Francie, if you want to follow Denise's thread, that's totally fine. We're in the open discussion portion of this.
I do, because I think Denise has hit on a very important. First of all, I am a senior, and second of all, I can see that what has happened is that we have medicalized old age, and we are trying to treat aging, and we definitely are, with medicine, which is also a tool, much like AI is a tool. but we don't actually look at the seniors that we're trying to treat with all these tools, because what they need isn't so much medicine as it is, community. And I'm saying this because I have a deeply personal connection too. I have a, really good friend who just went into a senior facility, despite the fact that she is completely, like I am, completely independent. And the reason she went there is because she wanted to talk to people. And nobody on the outside would talk to her. And so less medicine, more community. Most seniors know that they're going to die. They know that they either have one or more chronic illness. They're not, that most of them are not stupid. We've lived through a whole life. We've seen a lot of things. And what we would like is to live a meaningful life for as long as possible and then be allowed to die in peace. Instead, what we get is extra medicine. And we are the exact opposite of the UK. And you can tell it from when you go into a UK emergency room, they take the seniors last. First they take the children, and then they they take the middle-aged people, and then they take the seniors last. And the reason for that is that they're using resources, going toward the future instead of, trying to prolong the past. And I'm not saying that I don't want any medical care, but in the U.S., what they do if you're in an emergency room is they take the older people first, and they stabilize the heart attacks and all that stuff. And then they get around to everybody else.
Well, would you disagree that actually what's happening perhaps is they are just looking for, to treat the most severe, most acute issue first, no matter what? Because
because they have a policy.
Who's they?
This is a stated policy in the UK.
Oh, in the UK. What about in the US?
No idea what the U.S. policy.
So anyone else have any thoughts about this? And I agree. Denise, your question is really poignant. I'm a little stuck on this idea of we here. Who is the we? Because I'm having this dissonance within myself, thinking, I've given over, 2 decades of my life to wanting to be someone who is a part of the solution and not part of the problem as it relates to, the healthcare system, and following the path I followed and getting into debt as a result, and, all sorts of, these things don't feel really good, but this isn't about me. Maybe this is just what I'm hearing you say is, the aging in America are kind of invisible. And actually not invisible. I would say they're the cash cow.
Right. Well, just the opposite. They're not invisible. They are the source of unlimited profits, right? Because
what I meant was visible to the majority of the population, the general sort of projected we, and then the criminals came in and exploited the invisible population because no one was watching.
Yeah. And I say we. Everybody's uncomfortable with the term we, but I kind of don't like the idea of see, those people over there are doing this terrible thing. In a democracy, we theoretically have the opportunity to kind of weigh in and direct the ways that we want the world to be conducted. And as it comes to the elderly in our country, I don't think we're doing so hot. right? Like, I think we make decisions. Well, decisions are made. I'll stop saying we. Decisions are made every day that are not supportive of that community outside of the economic gain that is to be gotten from them. And so I think it's really it's easier to kind of focus on the downstream effects of different decisions, but I think it's really powerful to consider what is the general philosophy that kind of guides the way we think about healthcare in this country, about aging in this country. I was listening to Dr. Francine talk, and I was having a little dissonance myself because I was just like, well, it's like we all want to save people if they have the ability, any medical ability, any tool that we have to be able to save someone, we want to use that, right? And so listening to Dr. Francine saying, well, I don't know about that, is something I have to sit and really think about. And I think that conversation is like slowing down and being like, what is it that we actually believe, and then working from there, right? So like, take example the bill that's before Congress right now that would cap student loans at $150,000, right? Well, that means you'll never have a poor person that could be a dentist, a doctor, a vet, because that education costs way more than $150,000, right? So if you only have certain right. So it takes. So we're making decisions, or decisions are being made that shape who are the people who are providing these services. What is their connection or affinity to the communities that they're being asked to serve? Like, these are decisions. They don't come out of the blue, right? So I think this idea of like, what are the guiding principles, and then kind of working backwards from there. I very rarely hear those conversations because they're harder, right? Like, you have to make the hard decisions of how do we think about this or that.
Establishment to me. The establishment is not doing its job. Being the establishment.